LA Mayor Karen Bass just took some action on SNAP benefits. She joins us live here in studio. Mayor, welcome to The Story Is for the first time.
Thank you, and congratulations again.
Thank you very much. Nice to have an LA-based show, right?
All right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Let's talk about SNAP and your reaction to what you're seeing in terms of the government shutdown right now.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that the courts said that SNAP needs to continue to be funded. The question is, will the president go along with that and actually fund SNAP? But we have to address people's immediate needs and fear and concern right now. So in Los Angeles, in the mayor's office, we will be distributing resources to individuals, and people can go online for laforfamilies.org to get those resources. They'll be distributed at our family resource centers, and you can find out where those are. People need food immediately, and you know, food banks, resources are being sent to food banks, but this is just really a shame.
I mean, you were in Congress before you were the mayor.
Yes.
Does the president, though, have a point that the Democrats could say, we're going to pass a continuing resolution, we're going to reopen the government, and then we're going to negotiate? Isn't it in some ways a Democratic shutdown?
No. I mean, one of the things that was interesting that he said is that, you know, food stamps are primarily used by Democrats, which is just not the case at all. Republicans represent many, many, many areas where people are in need of food stamps. But the real issue that is keeping the government closed is the issue of health care. So not only are people going to experience a reduction in food stamps, but their premiums for health care are going to skyrocket in just a few weeks. And I know that that's what my Democratic colleagues are back there fighting for.
You are out with a brand new USA Today op-ed today. We want to put it up on the screen. Here's the title, and it is, "Here's How We Win Against President Trump," essentially making an argument about how LA has led in certain effects, pushing back on the president. What is your main argument?
Well, the main thing is that what happened here, we said when it did that it was an experiment, and that experiment was going to spread around the country.
You're talking about the
military intervention in our cities, something that has never happened before, especially that was completely unwarranted. And so cities absolutely need to resist. It's important to protest, but it is critically important that the protests be peaceful. And it is a call to look back at past social movements. To me, this is a moral outrage. The fear that spread over our city with people essentially being hunted down in the streets, being afraid to go to their kids' graduations, people afraid to go to work, to go to restaurants, and the way that it has hit our economy. We can't just sit back and take this. We can never allow this to be normalized. And so what the editorial is saying, the op-ed is saying is that we absolutely have to resist this. It is a moral outrage, but it must be done in an organized manner, in a peaceful manner.
Yeah, the mayor of San Francisco has been much more quiet than you on a lot of this, and he sort of privately negotiated a way, apparently, for the troops not to come into his city. Is that actually a better, more effective approach to not sort of poke the bear?
Yeah, but let me just tell you, remember what happened here. We had no notice, no warning. We woke up one day to an invasion in our city. That is exactly what happened. I was with the mayor, by the way, that day when he was waiting for the troops. He had been given warning for a long time, and you know, he reached out and we had a conversation about it, and I told him it would be a great idea, reach out to the president. I certainly put in a call. I didn't get mine returned, but again, we had no warning, we had no notice.
You know, some in the Trump administration will take issue with that word invasion, basically saying that they have a legal right to be here. That,
well,
it's, you know,
I don't care if they take issue with it. That's exactly what happened. We had the seizure of the federal government, seized power away from our governor, who is essentially the commander-in-chief of the National Guard. He federalized the troops and brought them to LA. We did not need them. We did not want them. And essentially you had 4,000 young people, young men and women, who were doing virtually nothing here.
And that case is now being adjudicated. It'll be interesting to see what happens as it continues through the courts. Meanwhile, there's an LA Times story getting a whole lot of attention that just came out this week. We want to show the headline for that. It says, days before the Palisades fire, firefighters were ordered to leave smoldering burn site. Essentially, January 1st, there was a small fire. Firefighters left that site, Days later, that became the Palisades fire,
That's right.
which became the deadliest and most dangerous fire, the most destructive fire, I should say, in the history of Los Angeles.
Yes.
How did that happen? Why did the firefighters leave, even though they said in text messages we should stay?
Right. Well, I found it extremely troubling, and I believe and called for an investigation today. You know, the after action report that was released a couple of weeks ago was an after action report on the January 7th fire. This is the January 1st one. And so we absolutely have to understand that. I do know in reading the article and speaking to some of the firefighters that many of them thought the fire was out, but clearly not enough was done, clearly.
When did you find out about these text messages?
I found out about the text messages in the LA Times.
So you had no warning about that
Absolutely
at
no
all?
warning. No.
When
No, I did not.
Were you informed about the fire on January 1st?
Yes, I knew about the fire on January 1st, and from what I knew and what I was told, the fire was completely put out. It was a relatively small fire. And so I just think that it is critically important that we have to look at all of these things, which is also why we have changed leadership. And so I am glad that I appointed a new fire chief. He has to go through the confirmation process in a couple of weeks, but we're going to get to the bottom of this.
You got rid of demoted Kristen Crowley, who was the chief of the LAFD at the time of the Palisades fire,
Yes.
Because of her performance, according to you. So essentially, why were no firefighters pre-deployed to the Palisades?
Well, that was a key issue, a key factor that led to the change that took place. Now,
Do you bear any responsibility for that, though?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we all know I am the mayor and the buck stops with me. However, if I find something that is deficient in a leader in a department, then it is my responsibility to make that change. And so I made the change. We had a interim fire chief in, and what I did was I conducted a national search. We took our time, and I believe we came up with a leader who was going to lead the department and transform what needs to be changed within the department.
And this is Jamie Moore, who you appointed.
Jaime Moore,
who you appointed
That's right.
this week. I'm sorry about
Yes.
that. But you know, there's plenty of critics. Spencer
course.
Pratt, who's online a lot talking about this, has pointed out the fact that there were no infrared cameras that were used to see potentially this thing smoldering.
You know,
Was that a mistake?
All of that has to be looked at. That is certainly a tool that could have been used, and it's my understanding if that tool had been used, they might have been able to see that. But that's why now there has to be the after action at the Lockman fire. And you know that it was after the ATF's report and the arrest of the arsonist that a lot of attention focused on the Lockman fire.
So Austin Butner, who is now running for mayor against you, says we need to do an independent investigation, that the LAFD should not be investigating itself.
That is happening as well. There is an independent investigation that the governor has ordered, and we don't anticipate that full report to come out for a few months, but there might be parts of it that comes out soon. We have to do both. We have to do all of the above, but the bottom line is that there needs to be significant change, and it will happen.
Rick Caruso, who ran against you for mayor last time and may run against you for mayor the next time,
Right.
put out a statement saying the lack of transparency, responsibility, and accountability in all of this for the mayor's office is staggering and inexcusable. We need full transparency, not a political cover-up. What's your
Yes,
response to that?
Well, my response to that is that we absolutely need to get to the bottom of everything that went wrong. There is absolutely no political cover-up that is happening here. But one thing that I think is so important is that people are still suffering. People who lost their homes, who lost relationships, the people that lost their lives, those family members. And one of the things that I think has been a tragedy in this whole situation are people who take advantage of folks' grief and people who use it for political gain and political reasons. And I think that that is frankly shameful.
Is that what you think Caruso's doing?
I don't know what he's doing.
Okay. What do you make, but you know there's a lot of people that are angry when they hear about these text messages, when they hear about the fact that there was
I
nobody
am angry
pre-deployed,
when I
they
hear
hear about
about
the
that.
infrared, they feel like this fire could have been prevented. And they feel like the city, if the city would have done more, their home wouldn't have burned or 12 people wouldn't have died.
And
What do you
I
say to those people?
absolutely understand that people would feel that way. We will get to the bottom of it. Change is underway, and this will never happen again in our city.
So obviously that's a very serious and important story. We will continue to follow it
Sure.
as it goes on.